All right, so, we cover a lot of unusual topics here, but today we're diving into something that might seem particularly, I don't know, mundane at first, a broccoli recall. But trust me on this one. We're talking about those Marketside Broccoli Florets from Walmart, the 12-ounce bags. A recall was initially issued back in late December 2024, but it recently got a lot more serious because the FDA upgraded it due to a potentially fatal contamination.
Wow. So what makes this case so fascinating is that, it really shows you how something as ordinary as a bag of broccoli can actually become a serious public health issue.
Yeah,
It's like a real reminder of just how complex our food system really is.
and how important it is to be,
Yeah.
vigilant every step of the way, especially since this recall affects a whopping 20 states. We're not talking about a localized issue here.
Right. Yeah. This isn't just a small town problem. The broccoli was shipped all over, primarily to the western and southern U.S. It makes you wonder, did distribution routes or maybe regional consumption patterns play a role in where these contaminated bags ended up?
Yeah, it's kind of unsettling to think that something, you just picked up at the grocery store could actually be so dangerous. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. What exactly is the issue with this broccoli?
Okay, well, the culprit here is Listeria monocytogenes. It's a type of bacteria, and it can cause a really serious infection called listeriosis. What makes Listeria especially dangerous is that it can actually survive and even, thrive in refrigerator temperatures. So even if you're storing your food properly, there's still a risk there.
Okay, so it's not like someone's intentionally contaminating the broccoli. It's more about preventing Listeria from even getting there in the first place. But how does that happen?
Listeria is actually, surprisingly common. It's found in soil, water, even in some animals. It can contaminate food pretty easily during processing, especially if the sanitation practices, they aren't really up to par. And then once it's in a processing facility, it can spread super quickly like wildfire.
And the FDA doesn't mess around when it comes to Listeria. They upgraded this recall to a Class I, which is their most serious level.
Right.
Meaning they believe there's a real and present danger to public health if people actually consume this broccoli.
Yeah, a Class I designation is a really clear signal to consumers to, take action and discard any of those affected products immediately.
So how did they even find out this broccoli was contaminated in the first place? Was it a customer complaint or something?
No, not at all. It all started with a random sample taken by the Texas Health and Human Services Department. They were at a Walmart store just doing their routine food safety checks. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. Right?
Wow, that's crazy. It really makes you wonder how many other contaminated products are out there just slipping through the cracks, of these random tests. Is there a better way to catch these things?
That's a great question. And it's one that food safety experts are kind of constantly grappling with. Random sampling is an important tool, but it's not foolproof.
So, we've got this random sample and it triggers a recall, but it wasn't immediately classified as Class I. Why the delayed upgrade? What changed?
Well, it's like a detective story. After that initial positive test in Texas, the FDA, they keep investigating, trying to trace the contamination back to its source and really understand how it happened. Sometimes that takes time.
So they're not just yanking the product off shelves. They're actually trying to figure out how to prevent it from happening again.
Exactly. In this case, as they gathered more information, the FDA determined that the potential for serious health consequences from, this particular Listeria contamination was high enough to, warrant bumping it up to that class, I recall.
Okay, so that's why we're talking about this recall. Weeks after it was first issued, it's not old news. It's actually more urgent now. But let's get specific. If someone's listening and they're like, wait, do I have that broccoli in my freezer?
Yeah.
What should they be looking for?
You're right. We need to give people the information to, protect themselves. So first, check the UPC code on the bag. It should be 681131328845.
All right, so 681131328845. Got it. What else?
Okay, there's also a lot code. It's printed on the front of the bag. BFFG327A6, and the best by date is December 10th, 2024.
So if you've got a bag of Marketside Broccoli Florets in your freezer and it matches all of that, just toss it out, no questions asked.
Yeah, better safe than sorry, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're dealing with a potentially serious foodborne illness like listeriosis.
This whole situation makes me wonder, how often do these kinds of recalls actually happen?
Food recalls are more common than you might think. The FDA and other agencies are constantly monitoring our food supply, and they issue recalls whenever there's a potential risk to public health, whether it's bacteria, foreign objects, mislabeling, other issues.
So it's not necessarily a sign that our, like, food system is a complete disaster. It's more like a sign that they're actually catching these problems.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Recalls are actually a positive sign, in a way, that the system is working. I mean, it means that potential hazards are being identified and addressed, before they can cause widespread harm.
Okay, that's reassuring. But it still makes you think twice about what's in your fridge, doesn't it?
It definitely highlights the importance of, like,
Mhm.
being informed and taking food safety seriously. Speaking of which, we've talked about, how dangerous Listeria can be. But I think it's worth taking a closer look at the symptoms.
Yeah, for sure. Let's paint a clear picture for our listeners so they know what to watch out for. What are, like, the red flags?
Well, the symptoms can be pretty sneaky. They vary, like, greatly, depending on the person and the severity of the infection. Some people might only experience, mild flu-like symptoms, like fever, muscle aches, fatigue, and headache. And these can appear anywhere from a few days to even a couple of months after eating the contaminated food.
So you could easily mistake it for, like, a common cold or the
Yeah,
flu.
exactly. That's part of what makes Listeria so tricky to diagnose. However, in more severe cases, it can actually invade the nervous system, leading to, more serious complications like meningitis.
Meningitis, that sounds scary. What are, like, the warning signs of that?
Well, symptoms of Listeria meningitis can include like a stiff neck, confusion, loss of balance, even convulsions. These are all signs that the infection has spread beyond the gastrointestinal tract and into the central nervous system.
Okay, so if you're experiencing those kinds of symptoms after eating something that, might have been contaminated, it's time to seek medical attention immediately.
Absolutely. Early diagnosis and treatment are critical when it comes to Listeria, especially for those who are more vulnerable to those severe complications. And we can't forget about the risks for pregnant women.
Right, they're particularly susceptible to listeria, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Pregnant women are about 10 times more likely than other healthy adults to get a Listeria infection. And while the infection itself may only cause, mild flu-like illness in the mother, it can be devastating for the fetus. Listeria can cross the placenta and infect the baby, leading to, miscarriage, stillbirth, premature delivery, or even serious health problems in the newborn.
That's heartbreaking. So what's the advice for pregnant women when it comes to food safety? Is there anything they can do to, like, minimize that risk?
The CDC recommends that pregnant women avoid certain high-risk foods, like unpasteurized dairy products, deli meats, and ready-to-eat seafood. It's also crucial to thoroughly cook all meats, poultry, and eggs, and wash fruits and vegetables thoroughly before eating. Basically taking extra precautions during pregnancy can go a long way in protecting both the mother and the baby.
It sounds like knowledge is power when it comes to food safety, especially during pregnancy. But this case brings up a broader question. If this recall was triggered by random sampling, what does that tell us about the limitations of our food safety system as a whole?
That's a really good point. It does make you wonder how many other contaminated products might be out there, slipping through the cracks of random testing. It highlights the fact that, our system isn't perfect. It relies on a certain degree of chance.
So even with all the regulations and safety measures in place, there's still a chance that something could be missed. That's a little unnerving.
It definitely underscores the need for continuous improvement in food safety practices and technologies. The FDA, food producers, and retailers, they're constantly working to refine their methods and stay ahead of potential threats. But it's an ongoing challenge.
It's like a constant race to keep up with the ever-evolving world of foodborne pathogens and contamination risks.
That's a great way to put it. And that's why consumer awareness is so vital. The more educated we are about food safety risks, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves and make informed choices about, the food we buy and consume.
Absolutely. It's a shared responsibility, and we all have a role to play. But, for the average person, staying on top of these recalls can feel overwhelming. Are there any, like, resources you recommend for staying informed?
There are definitely ways to stay in the loop. The FDA and the USDA both have websites where you can sign up for email alerts about recalls. You can also check their websites for, like, the latest information on current outbreaks and food safety advice.
So it's as easy as, like, going online and signing up for those alerts.
Exactly. And a lot of news organizations and consumer advocacy groups also report on food safety issues and recalls. Staying informed is the best way to
Yeah.
make empowered choices about the food you bring into your home.
This has been, honestly, incredibly eye-opening. I feel like I've learned so much about listeria, food recalls, and, like, the whole intricate system of food safety. It's amazing how much there is to know about something as, seemingly simple as a head of broccoli.
It's been a pleasure diving into this with you. I hope our listeners feel, empowered to take charge of their food safety
Hmm.
and to make informed decisions to protect themselves and their families.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into the broccoli recall, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We've talked about random sampling and how it's, not foolproof. So what can we actually do to make our food safer? Do we need more testing, stricter regulations, or something else entirely?
That's the million-dollar question. And unfortunately, there's no easy answer. Improving food safety is a complex, multifaceted challenge. It really requires a collaborative approach. It's not just about pointing fingers. It's about everyone working together to find solutions. Farmers, producers, regulators, and consumers.
So it's not just about more inspections or tougher rules.
No, those are certainly important. But technology also has a huge role to play. We're seeing some really exciting advancements in things like rapid testing methods that can detect contamination in minutes rather than days. And then there are traceability systems that can help us pinpoint the source of an outbreak much faster and more effectively.
So instead of just reacting to problems after they happen, we're kind of moving towards a more proactive approach to food safety.
Exactly. Imagine a system where every ingredient, every step in the processing chain is meticulously tracked and documented. If there's an outbreak, we can quickly trace it back to its origin, isolate the problem, and prevent further contamination. It's like having a detective on the case before the crime even happens.
That sounds incredibly promising, but also like a massive undertaking. Is the industry actually moving in that direction?
They're definitely making strides.
Mm.
The FDA has been, pushing for greater transparency and traceability in the food supply chain. And a lot of companies are starting to adopt these technologies, not just for safety, but also for efficiency and quality control.
So it's not just about avoiding bad headlines, it's about making the whole system better.
Absolutely. And consumer demand plays a big role here too, The more we demand transparency and accountability from the companies we buy from, the faster these changes will happen.
It's like voting with our wallets for a safer food system.
Exactly. And it's not just about buying from the right companies, but also about being, informed consumers. The more we understand about food safety risks and best practices, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves and our families.
It all comes back to education and awareness.
Absolutely. Simple things like washing your hands thoroughly before handling food, cooking meat to the proper temperature, storing food correctly. These can all make a big difference in preventing foodborne illnesses.
This whole deep dive has really driven home the point that food safety is everyone's responsibility, from the farm to the factory to our own kitchens.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's a shared responsibility, and we all have a role to play in keeping our food supplies safe.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from, a seemingly simple bag of broccoli to the complexities of our entire food system. We've talked about listeria, recalls, the limitations of random sampling, and the exciting potential of these new technologies. It's amazing how much there is to learn about something we often take for granted.
It's been a fascinating journey for sure, and I hope our listeners have found it informative and empowering.
I have to say, I never thought I'd be so captivated by a broccoli recall. But, here we are. It just goes to show that you can find a deep dive in just about anything if you look closely enough.
And that's the beauty of knowledge. It's everywhere, just waiting to be discovered.
Well said. So to all you broccoli lovers out there, stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember, food safety is a journey, not a destination. We'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive into a topic you might not expect.